I still remember the moment like it happened yesterday. My son, Nolan, looked me square in the eyes and said, "Meet the grizzly, Dad." Then he turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in Yellowstone's Lamar Valley with nothing but my weathered backpack and the crunch of pine needles under his boots fading into the early morning mist. I didn't panic. I didn't shout. I just smiled, because even then I knew exactly what I had to do. Before I continue, if you enjoy stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. See, Nolan thought he was in control. He assumed I was just some defenseless old man ready to hand over everything I'd built without a fight. He didn't know I'd been planning this moment for months. Every detail carefully orchestrated, every potential outcome anticipated. The camping trip? His idea. The location? He picked it. The timing? Perfectly aligned with his schedule. But the result? That was all mine. Let me rewind 6 months. That's when the money demand started. March 12th, dead. I need $7,500 for Emma's procedure. I transferred it immediately. Good fathers help their kids, right? March 21st, another $5,500. The specialist insists. April 2nd, $4,000 for the car repair. By July, my accountant, Daniel Pierce, was giving me that uncomfortable look. "Henry, you've transferred nearly $40,000 to Nolan in 4 months. That's more than most people make in a year." I opened my business account and stared at the numbers. $8,000 on average every month for more than a year. $412,000 total. Not once had Nolan asked how I was doing. Not once had he checked on my health, my business, or how I was coping since his mother passed away. But he sure knew my net worth down to the last penny. Then came the call that changed everything. "Dad, we should go camping," he said. Just like that, as casual as a request for cereal in the morning. Yellowstone, Lamar Valley. He had booked the site for that weekend. "This weekend?" I asked, scanning my calendar. "Contractor meetings, city planning reviews?" "Don't worry," Nolan said, his voice carrying that same edge I recognized instantly, the one he always used when trying to get his way. "When's the last time we really spent time together, just you and me?" Ah, the guilt trip. Classic Nolan. And of course, he threw in his wife's voice, Emma, claiming she thinks it's a great idea too. Emma, who drove a brand new SUV while insisting she couldn't afford rent. Emma, whose Instagram was full of vacations while Nolan somehow made it sound like a financial crisis. I sighed. "Fine, when do we leave?" 3:15 a.m. Thursday. Gotta beat traffic. 3:15 a.m.? Who in the right mind leaves for a camping trip at that hour? But I agreed, because Nolan was still my son. And deep down, I remembered the little boy who used to hold the flashlight while I fixed broken pipes, the boy who'd smile when we completed a project together. That Tuesday night, I started preparing. My heavy-duty sleeping bag, the camping stove, extra food, solar chargers, my old Swiss Army knife, and most importantly, my phone with a tiny digital recorder tucked in. I also printed out 18 months of bank statements, every transfer, every request, every lie. Then I overheard them. I'd gone downstairs for water when I heard voices through the walls. Nolan and Emma, on speakerphone. "Is he really coming?" Emma asked. "Yeah, he's actually excited," Nolan replied. But it wasn't excitement. It was something colder, sharper. "And the location?" Emma probed. "Lamar Valley, perfectly remote. Rangers rarely patrol there early in the morning." My stomach sank. I stayed in that hallway for 12 minutes, listening to them plot like they were discussing dinner reservations. My son and his wife planning a piking accident to get my inheritance. $2.3 million, plus my house, plus retirement funds. That night, I made 3 calls. First, to Daniel Pierce, my accountant, emergency will revision. Second, to my bank, place holds on all external transfers. Third, to my old construction buddy, Rick Martinez, whose daughter Sarah was a park ranger, a favor, framed as a coincidence. By Wednesday evening, Nolan was no longer my heir. By Thursday morning, he would have no access to my accounts. But he didn't know this yet. At 3:15 a.m., he arrived, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "Ready for an adventure, Dad?" I replied, "More than you know." The 6-hour drive was a lesson in entitlement. Nolan didn't reminisce about childhood trips or memories. No, he lectured me on downsizing my home, managing my assets, planning my retirement as if I was already dead and he was in charge. Mile marker 127, mile marker 194. By the time we stopped for gas in Cheyenne, his card got declined. Must be a bank error, he said. I handed him cash. Finally, we arrived in Lamar Valley, isolated, quiet, and exactly the kind of place someone plotting murder would choose. He pitched the tent with suspiciously professional precision, while I activated my voice recorder and slipped it into my shirt. "Dad, why don't you rest? You look tired." "I'm fine. Want to help with the campfire?" "No, relax. Sit down. You've been working too hard." Concerned son act, establishing the narrative of frailty. That evening, hot dogs over the campfire, coffee refilled, every action carefully observed. Around 9 p.m., his phone buzzed, a text from Emma. He stepped away to call her back, and my recorder caught everything. "We're here," Nolan said. "The site's perfect. Nobody around for miles. Tomorrow early, before sunrise, wildlife attack, hiking accident, something like that." Emma's voice, tiny, but chilling. "Check if he brought his will. You know, after tomorrow, it won't matter what paperwork he has." I sat by the dying campfire for another hour, listening, planning. Nolan had one critical mistake. He assumed I was helpless. He didn't know I'd been preparing for this exact scenario. At 12:30 p.m., I sent a text to Sarah Martinez, the park ranger. "Camping at Lamar Valley, Site 4A, beautiful area. Might need a wellness check around 6 a.m. if you're in the area." At 12:30 a.m., I uploaded the recorded conversation to cloud storage, time-stamped, clear as crystal. By 12:30 a.m., I had moved my tent 30 yards closer to the main road, still hidden from him, but within sight of anyone who might drive by. Nolan thought he was planning my end, but I was planning something entirely different. Justice. At 4:30 a.m., he shook my sleeping bag. "Dad, wake up. Perfect morning for the sunrise hike." But little did he know, I was ready for him and for the trap he thought he'd set. Subscribe for more stories like this, because what happens next changes everything.
At 4:30 a.m., Nolan shook my sleeping bag. "Dad, wake up! Perfect morning for the sunrise hike." I forced a groggy yawn, pretending to stretch and rub my eyes. "Sure, just give me a minute." He didn't notice the difference between my act and exhaustion. That was my advantage. He still assumed I was helpless, still assumed he had the upper hand. By 4:45 a.m., we were walking along the ridge trail. The sky was a soft orange glow, wildlife chirping somewhere in the distance, and the valley beneath us was cloaked in mist. Nolan talked about his plans for the business as if I were a silent partner, nodding along, pretending to agree. Every word he spoke, I mentally logged. I knew the route. I had studied it for hours the night before on satellite images. I memorized every bend, every hidden drop, every place where a hiker could get stranded or trapped. Then came the first signal. Nolan stepped on a loose rock. It skidded. He froze, peering down the slope, muttering something about being careful. I didn't react. He didn't notice the micro recorder in my pocket, capturing every word, every plan, every sinister thought. At 4:45 a.m., we reached the clearing he had pointed out for the perfect view. I sat on a rock, pretending to admire the scenery, while my eyes scanned the surrounding trees. Every movement, every shadow I cataloged. Then I heard the crack of a branch behind me. Nolan? No. Too light. Too soft. I turned slowly. Two figures stepped out from the tree line. Park rangers, Sarah Martinez and her partner Alex. They waved, casual, but in reality, they were ready for anything. "Morning, Henry. Beautiful day, huh?" Sarah said, smiling. Nolan froze. The color drained from his face. Yeah. Perfect morning." His voice wavered. I stood, slowly, letting the wind catch my words. Nolan, did you want to explain why you thought this would be a good place for an accident? The words hit him like a rock. His eyes darted between me and the Rangers. I don't know what you mean. Oh, come on, I said, holding up my recorder. Everything, your calls, your texts, your little Emma-approved plans, every step of this charade is on tape. Emma's name made him flinch. Dad, that's not— I raised a finger, letting him stumble. Nolan, you forgot one thing. I've spent 18 months tracking every dollar, every lie, every plan you thought I never noticed. You thought I was the gullible old man, but I was preparing. Every step you took was leading right into my trap. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. No words came. Sarah stepped forward. We've got enough evidence to arrest both of you if necessary, but Henry here wants this handled differently. Don't worry, son. Justice doesn't have to be harsh to be effective. Nolan's knees buckled slightly. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. The little boy I remembered was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized, someone greedy, calculating, and careless. I exhaled, finally letting the anger go. You want my inheritance? You want my life? You could have asked, but instead you plotted, and that is where you lost. Nolan didn't respond. Emma's face flashed on his phone screen. I had been monitoring her as well, and he understood, finally, that the game was over. By 6:15 a.m., the Rangers escorted Nolan back to the main road. I packed up, alone but triumphant, watching the valley bathed in morning light. I didn't smile, not yet. There was still paperwork to finalize, statements to confirm, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I had outsmarted the son who thought he could outsmart me.
The days after Nolan's arrest felt quiet. Too quiet. I kept checking my phone, scanning emails, watching the security footage I'd installed around the estate. Every so often, I'd see a familiar face on the periphery, a delivery driver, a maintenance worker, and my pulse would spike. Emma. She was the wild card. While Nolan had been careless, Emma was clever. She didn't leave traces. She didn't make mistakes. And I knew one thing. She was planning something. It was a Friday evening when the first real sign appeared. A package, unmarked, sitting on my doorstep. No note, just a sleek black box. Inside, a single USB drive. My hands trembled slightly as I plugged it into my laptop. The screen flickered, then displayed a single message. You stopped him, can you stop me? A live feed opened, my living room. My security cameras had been hacked. I saw her, Emma, standing in the shadows of my estate, her face half hidden under a hood. She smiled, a smile that said she was enjoying the game. My heart raced. I had prepared for Nolan, but Emma, she was unpredictable. I called Sarah immediately. She's here, she's watching, and she's good. Sarah's voice was calm, precise. Lock everything down. We'll trace the feed. Don't move until backup arrives. Backup arrived just after dusk. The team moved silently, tactical, setting perimeter lines and checking every entrance. But Emma wasn't inside the main house. She was outside, testing boundaries, probing weaknesses. Hours passed. I felt trapped in my own home, a prisoner of someone I had never underestimated. And then, a noise from the garden. I peeked through the blinds. There she was, Emma, holding a small device, something electronic, flashing softly in the dark. You wanted foresight, Henry? She whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. But foresight can only go so far. Let's see if you can survive this. Before I could react, a series of alarms erupted outside. Smoke bombs, traps, and decoys designed to confuse the security team. The night exploded into chaos.
Lights flickered, sensors blared, and Emma disappeared into the shadows, leaving nothing but traces of her passage. I realized then that this wasn't just a fight for inheritance or revenge. This was a test of wits. She wanted to prove she was the better strategist. Sarah's voice came over the radio. "Henry, focus. She wants you to panic. She's counting on it." I took a deep breath, remembering everything I had learned from Nolan's mistakes. Foresight, patience, strategy. Emma was clever, yes, but cleverness has limits. And preparation? Preparation is unstoppable. I activated the preset traps around the estate. Silent cameras, motion sensors, and automated lockdowns. The game was now mine. Minutes later, Emma tried to enter through the greenhouse. She froze. Her devices triggered the silent alarms. My team, coordinated perfectly, closed in. "Game over," I said softly. Emma's eyes widened, a mix of surprise, admiration, and frustration. She smiled faintly. "You were ready. I didn't expect this. Well played." 2 Rangers moved in. She didn't resist. She knew the game had ended, for now. The night ended in silence. Nolan was already in custody, Emma was detained, and the estate was secured. I sat on my porch looking out at the valley. The adrenaline drained slowly, leaving a profound exhaustion and an even deeper clarity. Some battles are fought with fists, some with words, and some with preparation, patience, and patience alone. I had survived. I had protected my family, and most importantly, I had learned that love and vigilance are inseparable. Because sometimes the people you trust most are the ones you must watch the closest. The game ended tonight, but what if someone even smarter appears next? Would I be ready? Stay alert, stay prepared, and never underestimate the power of foresight.